Councillor Eddie Davis, Committee Chairman. Can I please do apologies for absence first, please?
Apologies received from Councillors Duncan with Councillor Dillon sub judice.
Thank you. Can I have any declarations of interest in matters coming for tonight's meeting? Councillor Dillon.
Hyde Park Hayes, well, don't know if it's an interest there. I've just taken office space there, or regrettably. Would I need to leave them?
I think it could be determined. I would think yes.
I know I need to leave the premises soon, or Hyde Park Hayes.
But yeah, no, I think you would be, yes, you would be safer to be out of the discussion on that item. And in fact, that's beyond the petition item, so I could move that one to the back of the pile, and therefore you could just have an early night. Now that's reasonableness on my part. Won't become a habit of the evening, but just... Right, we have two sets of minutes in the bundle. 5th of April, which was the last full meeting of this committee, and the short meeting on the 10th of May. Can I have both of those confirmed as accurate, please? Thank you very much. The agenda we are taking tonight is the agenda that was published by the Head of Planning. All items are in Part 1 and in the public space. As I've just agreed, I'll take item 7 last, just to save us manoeuvring around. Okay, in terms of the running of tonight's meeting, we only have one petition item. I would remind everybody that this is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and that's not my semantics of grammar. It means that the rights to address this committee are as set out in the papers, as per the Constitution, and as I will summarise in a moment. But, however strongly people feel, there is no running debate between the audience and committee. Okay, so let me just be absolutely clear before we start. We're not expecting a fire alarm tonight. If the alarm goes, we'll be treating it as real, and the best fire exit's likely to be the one that you came in over there and straight down the stairs, but there's another one behind me. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least to silent? I presume most of you are here for the first item. Could I just ask that when you do leave, you're entirely welcome to stay for the rest of it, but I can't imagine you will, that you leave quietly, because we do have both a big agenda on this one and a further meeting to follow this, so I do need to keep the meeting moving. I think I hear the first mobile phone. For all items, officers will present a report which is in addition to the report that was published by the Head of Planning, and is also subject to the addendum sheet that will have been published this afternoon. Petitioners have the right to address us for 5 minutes. You get 4 minutes with a green light, a minute with an amber light, and you get to red, we will stop. There are no ward councillors who've indicated they're intending to speak. We are on YouTube tonight. This meeting is broadcast live on YouTube. All of those around the table with me are visible on for the whole of the meeting. When you present at the table there, you will also be visible on the council's YouTube site. The audience is not. The cameras are angled this way, so the audience is not picked up. Okay. In terms of those around the table tonight, we have a number of councillors, some of whom are new to Planning Committee and some of whom are certainly new to the Major Applications Committee. So a warm welcome to them. I'll start my introductions. I'll go left tonight just to do it the other way around. Councillor Dillon, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Morse, and then Councillor Edwards, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Tuckworth, Councillor Ruddian. The officer team tonight, Richard Milchewski is doing highways, Mandeep Malhotra is presenting, Richard Phillips is here as the planning officer who was involved in certainly in the first item and therefore may contribute. James Roger, the head of planning officer's advice as usual. Neil Fraser from Democratic Services, my clerk. Glenn Egan is my legal advisor. That concludes the administration. I will now move, please, straight to item 6. Could I make a request that everybody who speaks clearly into their microphone with their microphone on? Otherwise it gives us some difficulty with the presentation up. Mind it when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Members should note that there is an addendum on this item. For the most part, it's clarifying some of the existing conditions that we've imposed, but we are also imposing an additional condition in relation to the level crossing at the site. We've also noted that condition number 1, as recommended, an additional condition needs to be added, and that's in relation to this being a council-owned site. So I'm going to read it out. We've come across it in the past. So this authority is given by the issuing of this notice under Regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning General Regulations 1992, and shall inure only for the benefit of the council. So by way of verbal update, that will be an additional condition added to a decision notice. Agenda item 6 is for full planning permission for the change of use of the application site to provide civic amenity use, which is partly retrospective. If we go through the plans, this is the application site, highlighted in red, and the vehicular access route leads from here down to Tavistock Road. Just there, it's just off the map. We should have probably provided a larger scale, but most members did attend a site visit last week, so we are familiar with the access into the site. Well, this is a site constraints plan, which shows that the application site is actually a designated industrial business area for the purposes of local plan designation. There is a emerging site allocation looking to redevelop the entire parcel of land. So when I refer to the entire parcel, I'll go back a slide, and it's relating to a site allocation which looks to reallocate, remove the site from the industrial business area and provide a residential-led mixed-use development in any future proposals coming forward. This shows a bit more clearly the site access, which is highlighted in green, taking you to what will be the proposed civic amenity site. The site forms part of the former coal yard depot site, and there is an existing arrangement which allows the operation of an existing civic amenity for 28 days per year. This is known as the Golden Weekend. This refers to the opening of the site for a Saturday and a Sunday each month to provide facilities for civic amenity. The proposal would permit the use of the site for a temporary period of 5 years only, but to be used as a civic amenity site on a 7-day-a-week basis. Take you through, these are just some site photos showing you from within the site how it functions and operates. Once you've travelled up the access road into the facility, if I just highlight that the level crossing that we were referring to is just there, and this is the application site as it would be proposed to be laid out. So at the moment, I don't believe there's any real formal arrangement on the Golden Weekend, simply because it was a use that the council don't operate that frequently. But there will be a more formal layout whereby vehicles will enter a circular route to take them efficiently through the site. There are waste containers located here. It's all the green rectangles. So this is the public area just here. So the vehicles would arrive, park, depending on the waste that they were disposing of, which would be separated for different types of materials, and then leave the site back out in this direction. There is an existing weighbridge which would be used to service the trade waste, which is also associated part of the proposals for this application. The trade waste predominantly is serviced here. The site would handle up to 48,000 tonnes of waste per year, and the opening hours proposed are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturdays, Sundays and bank holidays. I did mention that at the rear of the site, or at the rear of the public area behind palisade fencing, so palisade fencing is just here, would be the trade waste area. Now, trade waste is a common service or feature of civic amenity sites, such as the offer that we have at the New Year's Green Lane civic amenity site. It's predominantly aimed at small businesses, builders, gardeners, to provide drop-off for small loads. It is proposed to be capped that trade waste cannot exceed 10,000 tonnes per annum. So that's within the 48,000 tonnes allowance for the entire application site. By way of background, the Council's Environmental Services Waste Team require a facility to the south of the borough. At the moment, there is only one civic amenity site, and that's at the New Year's Green Lane site in the north of the borough. This for a temporary period of 5 years, while the site allocation for the wider proposals for the redevelopment of the site would allow this to be utilised for civic amenities servicing the south. Essentially, the benefits as a result of providing the 7-day-a-week service are that there is therefore a facility within the south of the borough. Because the proposals are only temporary, they would not prejudice the long-term future aspirations of the council and potentially the landowner for redeveloping the site for more appropriate uses. The impact of the additional vehicle movements generated by the development are not considered to be significant, and there would also be a reduction of overall journeys which are currently made by borough residents travelling all the way to New Year's Green Lane to currently dispose of their civic waste.
Could I ask, please, that we just be quiet while the officer's presenting?
We continue to take you through. We are proposing a site waste management plan, so that is to reflect some of the proposals that we have, some of the existing features at the New Year's Green Lane site. So that's ensuring that vehicles are directed in the most efficient manner to dispose of their waste and leave the site as quickly as possible. There will also be employees on site during opening hours, and we are also hoping that by way of the site waste management plan, the applicant will be required to record peak hour site usage and report that on the council's website. So for information purposes, anyone using the site is likely to go to the council website, and they might be told to avoid certain times of the day. We mentioned briefly that there is a level crossing at the site, so this is the actual level crossing which is there at the moment. These pictures just demonstrate that there is closure of the facility by operatives when the crossing is in use, and this is the crossing in use, and it's not for significant durations of the day, and it's only 2 movements per day. This is the application site when viewed from the site at the moment. These are just some photos of the entrance into the Old Coal Depot site. This is off Tavistock Road, so you can see the buildings on Tavistock Road on the right-hand side. So further into the site, for context, the weighbridge is located approximately here. So this would be the public access into the site, all marked up. This is so that's the application site. This is an adjoining site on the left-hand side. And this is a view from within the application site. This is the demise of the site, and the wooded area is actually not within the application site and would not be changed at all. The surrounding estate. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a petition. Dr. Griffiths? Press the button on the middle, and then we'll start the timer when you begin to speak.
Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Dr. Don Griffiths. I speak on behalf of the many hundreds of residents who have signed a petition asking this committee to refuse the planning application for a combined civic amenity site and trade waste and waste separation facilities on the old coal yard, which is in close proximity to an increasingly crowded residential area, within metres of congested, fume-riddled roads. It is unfair and deeply flawed application, as it is the very assuring picture which is presented in your planning data, right? It says the annual waste tonnage will be no more than 48,000 tonnes per year, which is much higher than the 29,000 tonnes dealt with the field site in Harefield. Quite a lot. Hours of operation restricted to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But there is no mention that it will operate for 362 days a year, right? And this is a 95% increase in the operating time over present, which, to me, way of thinking, is a fantastic, idiotic system. Now, although the plan and operation, the document also fails to mention, you mentioned it, that there are 10,000 tonnes out of the 48 which will be trade waste, not household rubbish, and is a concern, I believe, of only Powerday and not this council. Although the planning application does not mention Powerday, in fact it's been kept under wraps, there has been confirmation from the deputy leader of the council that Powerday will run at least the waste treatment operation. The plan shows the civic amenity is 2,500 metres squared. The operation waste site is 3 times bigger, 77,500 metres squared out of that proportion, right? That is Powerday territory. This should be Hillingdon Council territory. It's separated completely. If you pass this application without removing the trade waste and waste separation elements, you will be giving Powerday what he's been dreaming of for 8 years, right? A waste operation facility in which they can erect a large building, since the environmental agency insists waste separation must be conducted inside the building. And you all remember that big one in the last whatever. 4 major issues. The committee should know, and I expect they will, that the inspector of the public examination of the West London waste plant said this site is unsuitable for any waste activities. There has been 2 applications oriented within Powerdays in which Network Rail have made strong objections. Now I've heard what has been said about this, but I know of no Network Rail has been approached to say that this system will be 95% increase on the people that are walking across your level crossing. There also seems to have been some sleight of hand, right, in the area measurements. That area, the big one, as you say, 9,663 square meters, right? Significantly, the bound area, yes, there we are, the boundary skirts around the ramp, which is the only way from the weighing bridge into the facility or out of the facility, right? Without that, nothing can get in, nothing can get out. So, I believe that that facility, which is an area which should be included in the site. You see it, look, it's cut right through. If it's included in the site, it measures 400 metres squared, which means the site area is now over 1 hectare, which means the application actually requires the Mayor of London to be the final arbitrator, right? If you approve this application, oh, it's gone. Powerday's 8-year-old dream will come true, right? The Hillingdon Council would have no part of it, only the complaints. And
I'd have to ask you to draw it to a close, please.
pardon?
Draw it to a close, you need. That's it. You've got to finish it.
I didn't see that.
Well
one.
done, Mike, well done.
Well, we're nearly there. We're nearly there.
You've got the main point.
If you could just stay there a second in case members have any questions. Nope. Thank you very much. Nope. Thank you.
Nobody wants to ask.
No, if they don't, they don't. That's fine. Okay, I will ask officers to clarify a number of elements in relation to what we've just heard, and then I'll open for debate. I think is the safest way forward. The first clarification is that there is not a waste separation site proposed here. An amended plan was issued earlier in the week, and that has been removed. That was never a part of it. That was an error in the plan, so that has been dealt with. So we'll take that out. I will ask the head of planning to comment on the red line, if I might. I think that's probably most appropriate coming from you. And then we'll open it for debate from there. Or does Mandy, do you want to do it?
So the reason for the current red line, and we did speak to, we had discussed this internally, is that this area is required in order to allow the weighing of the trade waste that services the site, and therefore allows them to make the requisite payment that's required.
Can I ask you to be quiet, please? I've asked nicely once.
It is anticipated that they would then travel back here to then have their waste separated. So that was part of the reason for the red line being here. We have noted that this site office would need to move in order to accommodate that vehicle movement, but at the moment we do consider that the red line is able to be served, or is able to service the trade and the other waste.
Thank you. Perhaps you would also clarify before, because it's going to come out in a minute, what is described as trade waste, if my understanding of the report is correct, would be the type of waste that would come from your local small builder, small tradesman, that type of operation, yes?
Sorry, there was a point the petitioner was implying that the 10,000 trade waste wouldn't be Hillingdon Council, but the application is in effect that it's full, that the council is seeking consent for up to 48,000 tonnes of waste, of which up to 10,000 would be trade waste. So the application is for that trade waste to be Hillingdon waste, that effectively be managed and recorded by people working on behalf of the London Borough of Hillingdon. And so if the council, in its Hatters Enforcement Authority, was, and this is covered in the wording of the conditions, was looking to receive data of the volume of trade waste, it would be asking representatives within Hillingdon Council for that information.
Okay. Good. I think that clarifies that for now. Councillor Oswald, you indicated, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I've got to say that the site visit on Friday afternoon was really useful. I'd never been on this site before. I didn't realise just how vast it was. But anyway, going back to the plans, I'm glad that you've left that up there, Mandit, because the plans that I've got in front of me, and these will be the plans that I'm making a decision on tonight, are incorrect. Because on my plans it says waste separation area. Now I noticed it's been taken
there
off.
was a revised plan circulated earlier in the week.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. I've got to tell you that I didn't receive it. And
apologies if not, but I said it was
Chairman,
circulated earlier in the week.
I know. I hear what you say, and I believe what you say. All I can say is I haven't received that. All I've got is these plans that I've got in front of me. The other issue, so for me that's an issue, and we've been through all this before with the planning inspectorate, and the applicant at the time was Power Days, and the appeal was dismissed, and rightly so. The red line around the Weybridge area, if that's removed and put straight along from the other red line, if I can just show you up here, if it goes, if this bit is taken away, this, and it goes along there, that puts it back into 1 hectare, as the petitioner's already said, and that would be correct, and that means it would be called in by the Mayor for London. So, as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, these plans are incorrect. I think there's some deceit here. And because I think these plans are incorrect, I'm going to move refusal now.
I'll take the rest of the debate before I take that, as I will. Councillor Morse.
Okay, I was going to second, but I'll accept your point. I still...
Well, if you do, I'll push it to the vote now and there will be no debate. But if that's what...
Exactly why I'm not going to...
If that's what you wish me to do, I'll do it.
I want to have a debate. What I want is crystal clarity of how this site works if that red line does not include that weighbridge. I do not understand how this site functions. And what's really interesting is the site measurement is within sort of 3% of what has to be called in by the mayor. And the tonnage is 48, and then 50,000 they would also have to be called in. So everything here is right on the edge, and we would like to get some clarity why that is not included in the... And there's also another point, the road approach. How are you going to condition the road approach if it's not included in the site development?
I think the planning officer has attempted once to explain the weighbridge situation. The answer is the weighbridge is in, because it's within the red line, but the planning officer's view, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, she'll correct me, I know, is that you can actually turn from the weighbridge back into what is within the red line site and then through to deposit your trade waste.
Excuse me, Chair. The functionality of the site includes that zone which is excluded, because you have to weigh the vehicle with material on, then you're also in reverse and weigh it, so you're going round in circles, and it doesn't seem to be particularly functional, and it seems to be an issue that we're getting the site to a level where the mayor's not involved. That's what seems to be essentially what we're worried about. We're really concerned about this.
I can ask the planning officer to clarify. I'm not sure I'm going to get any more, though, but I will ask.
I think I would go back that the assumption is that the vehicle would enter here and then travel back up to where...
And then when on the way out, do they do the circuit again, do they?
Circuit again, back out. So this is a one-way loop.
And how do they get weighed on the way out? Which I think was what the council was asking me in a...
I don't believe you get weighed on the way out, do you?
All right, please.
Sorry, I don't know that answer.
So there's not a lot more I can do with this room, I'm afraid. Let me just hold that for a minute and move, see if anybody else got anything else they want to raise with me.
The Chairman was just asking me to clarify further to give more guidance to committee on the red line. So the applicant has applied and submitted a plan with the red line that they are saying they can get the site to work. So you as a committee can approve that red line. If they then can't get that to work, the applicant would then need to reapply with a different red line boundary. But what Mandip was saying is that the applicant has told her they can operate the site without the red line including the area referred to. So my advice to committee would be that you need to determine it on that basis, but be mindful that if the applicant can't operate it that way, they'll need to come back with a different red line for the site.
Chairman, if that's the case, why didn't they put that red line across in the first place? That would have made it so much easier for everybody to understand. Instead of that, we're having a debate about where the weighbridge is, where the vehicles are going to go, whether that's part of the site, whether it isn't, whether they can reverse, or whatever they can do. Why didn't they do that in the first place? Well, I know why.
Sure, you're going to tell me, Councillor, but as you know, I will remind, as with all applications, we consider what is before us and the red lines that are on the site.
Well, then these plans are incorrect, Chairman. So we have to consider what's before us.
We do. The revised scheme that was circulated earlier in the week. Which the only significant change to it, the only change to it in essence is the words waste separation have disappeared off the back half of it. Which just clarifies. Yes, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Chairman. the petition actually had a lot of good points, most of which I've written down, but I can't use them now. So one that we could possibly look at regarding the exclusion from the West London Waste Plan. The site was already excluded. Could we have clarity on that? The railway, when it's gated, the number of cars that could possibly use it would not traffic then build up back onto the main road is another concern that I do have. And then the other major concern I have is that based on the figures of usage, 20% of the population to use the Civic amenity site. Now this is a site which is in a fairly decent location for people who are currently mostly we're getting people dumping their rubbish in Hayes and Harlington and Hillingdon and West Drayton and Useley. So given the population increases that we've had in Hayes, West Drayton, Useley, Heathrow Villages, Cowley, Uxbridge, Hillingdon, one would think you'd have more than 20% of the population using it. Therefore, your waste calculation may be out, and the number of vehicle movements may therefore also be out. Certainly, if you just look at the usage of the Golden Waste weekends, when you've got 524 vehicle movements on a Saturday and 640 on a Sunday, that's 1,614 during the 14 hours, which is about an average of 83 vehicle movements per hour. Calculate that, then you've got possibly 5,500 vehicle movements per week. So a little bit of clarity on that wouldn't go amiss. And then we'll come on to some other stuff, I suppose.
Okay, could I, just to help you with your point on the level crossing, if page 3 of the addendum actually details the usage of that freight line, which is an average of 2 trains pass through it during a 24-hour period at low speed because they are guided through. So that answers that point. I think from the site visit, and people correct me if I'm wrong, because you weren't obviously on the site visit, you can get, in addition to whatever vehicles would be using the red line that is before you, we would have thought you could get anything up with certainly 20 and 20 plus vehicles between that and the Tavistock Road, plus whatever's in this site. So at least 20 more, just by the length of it. So that's a kind of gives you a feel, hopefully, for that, which was, and I don't think I'm saying anything that members would disagree with at this point. Okay, you have some questions around traffic, I think, Councillor Dillon.
Can I just come back on that?
You can come back. I'm hopefully just trying to clarify, but yeah, come on.
And you have. Just on the reverse, on the other side, whilst those gates are closed for the trains to go by, do we know the length of time? Just in case for a fire issue and fire and safety, if those gates are closed and you have a fire within the amenity site, how long are those gates closed and what are the precautions that we have there for people to escape? Because it's one road in, one road out, I believe.
So just to give us slightly more clarity, so the highway engineer worked out from the entrance sort of gates to the end of the access road, it was 25 vehicles back to back was possible, but obviously part of the way up it is the actual railway level crossing, so you wouldn't get 25 to the level crossing, it'd be a lower number than that, but still a fair number of vehicles, as members would have noted on the site visit. It is only 2 trains a day. We've got sent some photos showing the banksman in operation. I think it was on one of the slides, and it was only a few. There was a time. It's not actually coming out. Well, yeah. People aren't in the public gallery going to see it, but in the bottom right-hand slide, in the left-hand corner, you might be seeing it, Councillor Dillon, there's an orange time. Yeah. But so we got sent a sequence of photos, and it was only a few minutes that the white van appeared with the banksman from Network Rail, and then the gates were down, and then the gates are up again. So it's not a long duration of time, and we're told it's on average only two trains per 24 hours. So that in itself, I don't think that's of a frequency that it's going to cause highway safety issues.
Then a certificate, would you get a certificate for fire safety then, based upon those assumptions?
Just to clarify, we did consult with Network Rail. They haven't raised an objection. I can only sort of hypothesise in terms of their thought processes, but we think that it's to do with the Golden Weekends, that they were satisfied with the Banksman operation for the Golden Weekends. Therefore, the Golden Weekends was allowing the public across a level crossing. Therefore, why would they, having been satisfied that the public can go across a level crossing, raise an objection because the frequency has increased? But we're giving members the additional comfort of the condition in the addendum.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Edwards next.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's important that we look at this in the context of this being an existing operation. We're not talking about a brand new one that's not operating. We've had proven success of the Golden Weekends, and it is enjoyed by local residents. And what we're looking to do here is make that availability over a longer period of time. So whilst there may be issues around the level crossing, and I'm very pleased to see the addendum item on it, I don't know that that in itself is a fatal flaw, in that it hasn't prevented it being operating now for a number of years without incident, without concern. And one would expect, when it's operating only as a Golden Weekend, that the intensity of use would be much higher, in that residents would only have that one or two opportunities at that weekend, the Saturday or the Sunday, over the course of the month to attend the tip, whereas now they would have a longer period. So for me, I think the principle of the development is being well established by the officers in the report, and certainly the planning officer, the policy officer, sets that out. The fact that it is an existing one also gives me some assurance that this is a workable operation. The question I have is regarding the intensification of use, and I do understand residents' concerns about traffic impact. And I am aware of the area, and I know the pressure that is on the high street there and the junction with Tavistock Road. And where I would come from is working back from the other end of why has there been the upper limit of 38,000 tonnes for residential use been put on here, and what is the possible generation of traffic if that upper limit were to be reached. And I think that is the sort of consideration that I would be in my mind. So this isn't so much about whether or not we should or shouldn't have this operation. It's about the extent to which this operation should be allowed to operate, and whether or not within planning terms we need to mitigate against some potential harms with regards to the intensification of use and traffic. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'd be grateful if officers could answer, why the 38,000 tonnes? It was new to me that Harefield is 25, so what's the expectation that this will be 50% busier? And what is the traffic movement through Harefield, and what would that model with the impact on the junction? And maybe we'll come into Richard at that point to ask whether or not that junction will continue to operate at that level of intensity. Thank you.
Perhaps I could, that is a good question and well put. Perhaps I could just ask the officer when if I can build something into your question, which I think may help us. The traffic assessment on page 26, I think, compares this to a site in Kingston. I'd be interested to understand in the answer when the traffic officer gives it what sort of tonnage is running through that site, because that would give us a clue as to how robust we are. Or one of the officers taking it.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, from looking at the site that we did the comparative on, there is a comparable tonnage to what's set for this particular application. Clearly, the site's circumstances are never exactly precise.
So Kingston is running at the sort of 48,000 tonnes level?
It's just below that.
Right, okay.
So there is a comparison, but we appreciate that there are subtle differences between certain sites, and there isn't a 100% accuracy in what we have here. But it is a very good, the best guide that we can have to use for this particular site.
Okay. Does that help you, Councillor?
A little bit, but it hasn't quite answered the question of how 38,000 tonnes of residential waste is delivered to this site by car in a year, how many traffic movements would that cause? Taking reasonable assumptions, because as a planning committee, that is the sort of thing that we would be agreeing to. We'd be allowing a traffic movement that delivered 38,000 tonnes. And what I'm trying to do is measure the impact of that on the road. I can't, in my own head, work that out at 23 cars an hour.
Okay, let the officer, obviously they've used Kingston's, let the officer come back. And I could remind you, Richard, when you're finished, to turn your microphone off for me, otherwise you will cause problems for us.
Yes, Chair. If I may refer to Councillor Dillon's valid point on the hourly generation, or I think you quoted 83 cars per hour, which is pretty well what has been estimated, and that's what we would expect. Now, based on that level of demand, we certainly would think that would actually cover that the tonnage we're talking about over a yearly period. If you look at it in the context of a year, clearly it does look like a lot of activity. But when you break it down to the hourly movements of 83 vehicles, again, it's an imposition on the neighbouring main junction, as we all know, in traffic generation terms. However, I think members would be aware that owing to the COMAG site of the 250 residential units being redeveloped within that area, we've managed to secure monies to improve the signal junction with signal realignments, curb realignments, etc., which will be happening in due course. So in effect, it will increase the capacity of that particular junction, which will also aid movements from this particular site as well. So that's taking the sort of overview of the impacts and how they can actually be accommodated within the
Councillor?
So whilst I may have some concerns that bang around in my mind, is Mr. Michalski saying that in his professional assessment, the junction is able to cope with that 83 additional vehicle movements per hour on average, recognising that they will probably be higher at the weekend when traffic flows during the high street, maybe slightly lower, and maybe lower at peak periods during the rush hours?
Yes, Chair. Well, certainly capacity assessments have been undertaken for that particular junction, and at the moment, on average, it is running under the maximum recommended capacity, which the Department for Transport recommend. But clearly, there are peaks. There are peaks where we are getting queuing there at certain times. I think we're all aware of that.
Quiet, please. If you want to debate, fine. But you're not, at the moment, the officer is trying to make a point which members need to hear.
I think it's certain that if, for example, the frequency of operation associated with this scheme was significantly higher, then we would have more concerns with overloading that junction.
But on the scheme as presented, you're happy it works in transport
as presented, yes.
Right. I think that's asked and answered. Right, now I've got... I think I was Councillor Oswald, Councillor Morse from my memory, and then Councillor Dillon, but I may have got that one wrong.
Thank you very much, Chairman. You got it right. On page 8, under compulsory informative, it lists a number of national policy framework issues. One of them says minimising carbon dioxide emissions. I don't think it's going to do that. Also on page 9 it says smoothing traffic flow and tackling congestion. Well, I don't think it's going to do that either. And further down it says improving air quality. Well, I think that's debatable. Chairman, look, I said that I'd never been on this site before until I went on there on Friday, and that's true. Certainly opened my eyes. This would be an absolutely wonderful scheme if it was somewhere else. When I tried to get onto the site, it was trying to get onto the site to turn right into it because that was the way I came to it. And I had to wait quite a long time to get onto the site. So the vehicles that are going to be coming onto this site to offload their household waste and rubbish, and even the 8-wheelers probably that are going to be picking these containers up, I would imagine they're 8-wheelers, they're going to have to turn right or left, whichever way they come from, but it was leaving the site as well. whether you turn left or right, you're going to turn into congestion. That's a very, very busy high street. Usually West Drayton. Councillor Edwards, he knows that because he was a usually councillor. I've lived in that area, well, around that area for quite a long time, know it quite well. And where are these eight-wheelers going to go that are taking this? Are they going to turn left or right? Because whichever way they're going to go, this isn't going to smooth the traffic flow. It isn't, because they're going to have to go back through an already congested high street one way, or an already congested high street another way, going out towards Stockley bypass. So on those issues, I'm really not happy with it. I'm not going to go back to the plans because I've already made my points on that, and I have to remind you, Chairman, that I move refusal. Thank you very much.
And I also held it for debate, and then I'll see whether you get a seconder.
I know you know.
I generally do. Councillor Morse.
This is the road outside, adjacent to this is an aqua, and in an area control zone, under London rules, any developer has to prove that this is air quality neutral. There's no deterioration. If you look out the exit to this, there's two roundabouts, both adjacent. If you sit in the cafe and have a coffee, you will watch all these buses turn around these roundabouts, lots of braking, acceleration. So you've got concentration or release of particles. I'm not going to all this, but this is not neutral. This is actually a very considerable increase in the traffic on this thing, and I actually think this is does not comply with being air quality neutral. What about even improvement? I mean, it's a nonsense. So we've actually got an aqua in which we are actually injected. My original question, which I'll come back to, is I've got 5 reasons of refusal, and I haven't covered any of them yet, really seriously, but I would like to get some information on this issue. We're actually pushing all this traffic into a congested high street.
Can I take Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that I don't think we've taken into account the increases in population that I did mention, seeing this the traffic audit was done in 2010, from what I believe. But if we could go back to the site not being appropriate from the West London Waste Plan, that hasn't been answered yet. If we could go back to that one, I'd be grateful.
Before I bring the head of planning in, because we've been now coming up for 50 minutes on this one, so and I've kind of got where most people are, one way or the other. Are there any other issues you want me, the head of planning, to answer? Because I've got air quality and I've got the West London Waste Plan written on my sked.
Risk assessment on this crossing.
Microphone, please.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. Risk assessment on the crossing, because I'm looking at inspectors' reports, and there's the issue of clearly one of the inspectors, he said that there has to be a risk assessment unless there is clear information from the rail network.
Okay, no, let me do them all because we're taking too long now. Any others? I'm just going to wrap them up together and get them all answered in one go. Just efficiency. Right. Okay, I've got 3 loaded on the desk. Air quality, West London Waste Plan, and risk assessment Reader Crossing.
So it is a temporary application for 5 years. So the existing designated use of this site is for an industrial business area, which would normally mean B1, B2, B8 uses would be acceptable, and those uses would generate a number of vehicles, which would normally be heavy goods vehicles. So I know we're going into detail on highways, but that is the context of this site. It is a designated industrial business area. Now, our emerging local plan part 2, that will later this year be subject to examination in public, that looks to redesignate this site. And the moment it doesn't carry weighting, will carry weighting in the future, but because this is a temporary permission, we don't consider it prejudices that potential use. Now, in terms of the site allocations, the document envisages which sites will come forward in terms of delivering housing within 5 years to contribute towards our 5-year housing supply, and those 5 to 10 years. And this site is in our site allocations as 5 to 10 years. Now, I know all this is, I'm getting quite into the minutiae, but had it been one of the sites, and there are sites in the site allocations that are proposed for shorter term delivery of housing, that would have been an issue for this application, but it doesn't apply in this case. In terms of the air quality issue, you have to factor in that at the moment vehicles are travelling all the way to Harefield in the south of the borough to deal with their waste, and that is a relevant consideration. In terms of
risk assessing the level crossing was the last.
Yeah, so there hasn't been a risk assessment, and the reason for that is that Network Rail haven't asked for a risk assessment. They did ask, you're correct, they did ask for Power Day with their 900,000 tonnes of waste for a risk assessment, but they haven't objected to this application. I can't say any more than that, I'm afraid.
Okay, I think those are now covered. Anybody got any other issues? Councillor Edwards.
I would just like to clarify for absolute certainty who will run this site, because there is an expectation, and I believe I heard from the petitioner, I may be wrong, an expectation that Power Day would be operating that, and I would like to understand who is going to operate it. And I would also like to just put this in the context of what I understood to be Power Day's initial application, which was for 900,000 tonnes. And I think we shouldn't confuse the size of the two here. This is of a much smaller one. But I am keen to understand who will run this site, who will be making the decisions there.
I mean, this is a Hillingdon Council application, and the planning permission will be granted for Hillingdon Council. So, if I can be precise with the committee, so it's my understanding that Power Day would be involved in some of the operations on site. Now, I don't want to mislead committee, because they that is my understanding, but the planning permission will rest with the council. The conditions are effectively controlling it so that it's a council operation. The council will be responsible if there's breaches of those planning conditions. There are some very strict conditions that control everything from the waste tonnage to the hours of operation. So it is a council operation. But I am aware, and members will be aware, because there was 2 operatives from Power Day at the site meeting that occurred. So it is not the case that there is no involvement whatsoever of Power Day, but this is a Hillingdon Council planning application, and that's the important point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Oswald, I think we've got about as far as we're going to get. I think minds are pretty set. We're not going to move them, I don't think. I don't think there's anything further to come out in terms of significant issues. Councillor Oswald has proposed refusal. Does he have a seconder for that?
I will second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I don't think you've made out grounds in detail as to why they should be refused, but given the strength of feeling on this application, I normally don't, but I will let that run to the vote just to see where we go. But if it is, your grounds at the moment are far from made out. But all those in favour of refusal, please show me. All those against, please show me. That one didn't go. That one didn't fly. Can I have another proposal, please? Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. This is not an easy one, but as I say, I do see some very significant public benefit in this. Over the last 4 years of representing this area, I've had to contend with a tremendous amount of fly tipping, which is getting increasingly worse. It is incumbent upon us as a local authority to provide adequate facilities for residents to be able to dispose of the rubbish. What we're doing here is not creating something new. We are extending an existing use and an existing place. I believe it's wholly appropriate, as set out by the report and in the planning statements, and as outlined by our head of planning. And therefore, I would move that we accept the officer's recommendations and approve this.
Thank you. Can I add a couple of bits to that, please? Obviously, subject to the council paragraph and the addendum, and the approval is subject to the amended plan, which was issued earlier in the week. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Yarrow. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. That one is approved.
Mr. Chairman, I won't read them out, but we will submit 5 reasons for refusal, or why we voted for refusal. We did our best to go for it.
Okay, I'm moving to item 7, please. Oh no, I'm not. I need to move on. We'll do item 8, not 7. I've just been reminded I had moved the order, which of course I had totally forgotten.
Thank you, Chair. If we move on to agenda item 8, it's the Maple and Poplar Day Centre. Sorry, I was quite close to the microphone there. There is an addendum for this item. The only verbal update I have on this item is that the full wording of condition number 1 So the full wording of condition number 1 has not come through to the planning officer's report, so I want to read it out as a verbal update, and we will propose that this wording is added to any decision notice issued. Very similar to the civic amenity one. So this authority is given by the issuing of this notice under Regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning General Regulations 1992 and shall inure only for the benefit of the land. Moving on to the application. The proposal involves the demolition of the existing single-storey former day centre building and its replacement with 2 3-storey blocks of flats accommodating 34 residential units, 100% of which will be affordable housing. They will be positioned around a central car parking area. I'll take you through the application site. So for context, this is the A312 and this is the application site, and this is Maple Road. The site has no site constraints. It is borough boundary just to the north, and there you get a more intense view of the A312, and there's quite a significant buffer to the application site. This is the former day centre, so the 2 buildings on the south, and it was facilitated by a surface level car park to the north of it. This is just a site survey plan of all the trees, and you can see the low level extent of the single storey buildings on the site. The application proposes 2 3-storey blocks, one to the north, one to the south, located around a central car parking area. This is the ground floor plan. Now the ground floor plan is the same for both blocks, albeit they face one another, therefore their position is mirrored. I think is the easiest example. So that's the front entrance here. This is the front entrance to this block, but this is the generic floor plan for both blocks. Go through to the first floor plan, so all units are served by a central core and are all provided with individual balconies, and the same layout occurs at second floor level. This is the roof plan with some PV panels proposed and proposed elevations for the proposed development. Again, both blocks are very similar. They are fairly contemporary in design, but that's not significantly out of character with the area. There is an example of another flatted development in the locality. So we mentioned that this was the entrance into the site at ground floor level, and this would be some amenity area for that ground floor flat. Take you through some of the other elevations, and then a typical wheelchair accessible unit, some of which are provided within this development. So there are some proposed materials for information purposes, and a proposed section through the development site. The site boundaries are marked by a green buffer of grass, medium-sized trees and hedging. The buildings on the site were in use up until 2016 and have been vacant ever since. Re-provision of daycare facilities have been provided elsewhere within the vicinity of this application site. I mentioned earlier that the buildings mirror one another in design and internal layout, and each building would accommodate 17 two-bedroom affordable housing units. The application is considered to represent brownfield development supported both locally and nationally. The site delivers 100% affordable housing, 50% council rented and 50% shared ownership. The site provides one car parking space for each property in accordance with council's parking standards. The retention of the landscape buffer for the vast majority along the site's boundary would occur here. The scale of the proposals are in line with the adjoining area. The private and communal amenity space requirements of the site exceed the council's policy requirements, and accordingly the application is recommended for approval.
Okay. We have no petitions on this one. Anyone got? Start me off, Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thanks very much. Sorry. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's okay. I'm quite pleased to see the car parking space. Start again. Car parking layouts. Simply because there's 2 motorcycles, 20% car parking spaces served by active electrical vehicle charging. I think that's really quite good. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendations.
Anybody got anything else they want to raise, Mr. Councillor Edwards?
I would second that, but I just want to pick up what I believe to be the issue of the plans that is shown here, Block A and Block B, both the same floor plan. One should in fact be the mirror image.
I think the officer presentation said they would be a mirror.
But we're approving the plans as written, which is, I think they need to be amended or in some way annotated that actually Block B is a mirror of Block A. Could I suggest we do a notwithstanding approved plans and delegate?
It's done by virtue of this proposed site plan. So this is the site entrance here, and it is annotated. So therefore, it's showing on the site plan that they are mirrored as opposed to an alternative layout. I know the other arrangements are typical, but this does clarify what the approved layout that we're giving consent for is, and that's not that the building form can change.
Okay, if officers are comfortable with it, then so am I. I've no additional knowledge.
Good. Councillor Morse?
Energy. I notice we don't meet the energy target and we've got a sum of money. Do we accumulate these pots of money, and then what do we do with? I'm just interested in what we do to introduce energy saving schemes. It's just a general inquiry as to what we're doing.
If officers can answer it in general terms, I'll let it ride. If they can't, I will knock it out. Otherwise, I would suggest other mechanisms for raising said query.
I mean, so there's an officer members may be familiar with called Ian Tyne, who's our Sustainability Renewable Energy Officer, and I know he has been involved in advising on schemes involving low energy lighting to car parks and such like that relate to a wider fund that we've been accumulating. So it is picked up.
I think. Any other queries on this one? I think Councillor Oswald said he's prepared to move it.
Second, subject to the amendment.
It's subject to the addendum. All those in favour, please clearly show. That one's approved. Thank you very much. Item 9 effectively is a variation on the S106 because the operator is struggling to get a car club. There is an addendum update which basically says the travel plan coordinator will need to liaise with car plan operators, car club operators quarterly to see if we can find one, which seems entirely
minor change. I'd move the report and officer's recommendation.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Oh, Councillor Dillon got there first. Okay, all those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much. I will move back to the one Councillor Dillon is leaving us for.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item 7, which is HPH3, Hyde Park, Hayes, Millington Road, Hayes. I would draw members' attention to the fact that this is the conversion prior approval type process, so grounds for looking at this are highly limited. So, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Yes, the grounds for looking for assessing the prior approval are fairly limited. I do have a screenshot of what they are, and I'm probably not going to find it now. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so they're limited to transport and highways impacts, contamination risks, flooding risks, and impacts of noise from commercial premises on the intended occupiers. Now, we are bound by what we can assess. The application has been assessed by various specialists. On the whole, it's deemed that the proposals are acceptable, but in terms of the highways and transport impacts of the development, it's deemed that there are mitigation measures required, and that has come through by virtue of the heads of terms, which are provision of a full travel plan, an obligation to secure the auditing of the travel plan, the £20,000 fund bond for the travel plan, and then the £60,000 towards improving the safety and convenience for walking and cycling to the Crossrail station and Hayes Town Centre further afield. The obligation that we're also securing is also to prevent future residents from applying for parking permits within the existing and any future parking management scheme that we may have in Hayes. The application is recommended. You don't recommend prior approval for approval. It's recommended that prior approval is not required, subject to the legal agreement, the heads of terms. And I'll leave that with members to consider.
I don't think members ever get that bit, but we're not going to try tonight. Motorcycles you were going to update on? Just because I know it may not have slipped off people's radar. 7, I think, was your magic number?
I am sorry, yes. So we have added an additional condition, but I forgot the number of motorcycle bays. So by way of verbal update, the additional condition we're requesting for electric vehicle charging will also include 7 motorcycle bays. Thank you.
Yeah, that's based on a normal ratio of 1 motorcycle per 20 parking bays.
Views on this one, bearing in mind the areas we can consider.
It seems very straightforward, but I really have to ask our legal advisor how we can impose a condition on something that's not required. It just conceptually does not make sense.
The English doesn't tend to make sense, but we've had this problem once before, or maybe several times.
Good luck with this one, then.
Yeah, you've had a nice easy night so far, and which is good.
We'll do our best to amend that one if it's challenged, but no, it seems to be a reasonable condition. It's not been challenged.
But they don't require the approval, is what we're saying. You don't need the approval, so ignore it, but you've got a condition on it, and I don't see how the two sit. I would have thought if you needed to condition, you needed a prior approval, and that would then be conditioned.
I think we've had this debate, we've never resolved it yet.
The grounds we've got for refusal are as on the screen. I'm happy to give advice outside the meetings that would help in some more detail there as to
I think that might. Yeah. That might. I don't think we're going to resolve it tonight because it sounds too technical and complicated. Can someone take me forward on this one, because I don't think there's any views on it.
I must go with the legal advice and say this is perfectly okay, in which case I'll move the officer's recommendation.
But subject to the addendum and the verbal update.
I'll second.
All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. That one is approved. Thank you very much indeed for your time at 7:10.